welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be chatting with a couple creators for the Kickstarter that's currently going on called Young Men in Love. It's from A Wave Blue World, which Tyler has been a guest on the show before, and we've chatted. And so let's bring in our guests. Let's see, we have Joe Glass and Matt Miner. How's it going, guys?
Hey,
Hi,
how are
good to
you,
see you.
Chad? Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. So before we get started talking about your part of the project, because I know it's an anthology series and there's a bunch of other people involved, tell me a little bit about yourself as a comic book reader and creator.
Cool. Well, I've been reading comic books, um, almost all my life, like since I was a little kid. Really got heavily into the collecting, and sort of reading absolutely everything I could put my hands on. When I became a teenager, like around 12, 13, and would primarily was obsessed with X-Men, like every gay guy on the planet, and just I got absolutely everything I could get my hands on, and fell in love with the medium. I knew I was a fan of telling stories, so I kind of figured I'd want to do something in comics myself. And yeah, I worked hard to get to a point where I started telling my own, and I made an LGBTQ plus superhero series called The Pride, which has been collected in the Pride Omnibus, which is out now in comic bookshops and bookstores. Um, I've done various other small press and independent titles since then, most of which were self-published. But obviously, one of my other big projects was Young Men in Love, the first one, which we won all kinds of awards for, which was really awesome to see that it was received so well. But yeah, that's kind of where I've
They're
been
over
at
there.
as a comic creator, as well as a comic reader.
Yeah, and kind of like Joe, I started off as a kid, obviously, and I was heavily bullied and abused as a kid, and I kind of dove into comics as an escape, and really, really resonated with the X-Men. Like you said, every gay guy on the planet, right? I'm bi, I'm not gay, but yeah, it still
Still
fits, right? So yeah, I mean, I grew up reading comics. I actually had an idea that I would be a prose writer when I was a kid, and I tried and tried and tried and kept failing as I'm reading comics, right? And it wasn't until, I don't know, about 10 years ago that I was like, hey, I've been reading comics my whole life. I keep failing at prose. What if I try and write a comic script? So I went back to school. I studied under Scott Snyder. And
I heard good things about it.
yeah, I mean, he's okay, I guess. No, I went back to school. I took a class from Scott. He's always been an amazing, supportive guy. Very, 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 very kind. And
Cool.
that's where I ended up writing comics. I had my first pitch ready when I went to Scott's class. He helped me refine it. Then I pitched it to Steve Niles and Black Mask Comics, and there we go. I've done several series at Black Mask. I've done series at several other companies. I've done anthology work like for Vertigo, DC. And we did the Young Men in Love, which is my proudest achievement, honestly, because it brought to the world the book that I wish I would have had when I was a kid. The one that makes me feel less alone, the one that makes me realize that it's okay, what I'm feeling. I mean, I grew up in the 90s where every other insult was something about, either gender or sexuality. So, it was fag this, fag that, right? I mean, I'm allowed to say it, right? So, yeah, uh, I've just been so stoked working on this book with Joe. Bringing a new volume of Young Men in Love out there. Hopefully, it connects with people the same way the first book did. And that's really the important thing. We're not looking to get rich. We're looking to help queer kids and adults who may be feeling a little alone or need a little shot of romance in their life.
Absolutely.
So kind of give me an overview of what, the anthology, you know, is. I know this, you said this is the second volume, so
Mhm.
kind of before we get into, your guys' story, let's go big picture, I guess.
Well, we sort of came up with the idea of viewing Young Men in Love because one of the first things we noticed about what little gay representation there was, or gay romantic representation there was in the field of literature, was almost entirely written by women. Like they're even now I've since sort of pivoted myself into writing romance novels as well, and the way that um so male romance stories by women are bigged up and supported, particularly by like retailers and everything, is so much more than you get for gay male or queer male of any description creators telling the same kind of stories. And we thought it was a bit odd. We thought it'd be nice to have more stories which had this sort of genuine connection, this sort of sense of almost lived experience. So that was the initial idea with Young Men in Love, was we would reach out to other queer male, non-binary and transmasc creators who have a lived experience of queer romance and feelings, to be able to tell stories which they want to tell of that kind of ilk. When the first volume sort of came about, people started pitching their ideas, and they very quickly were coming in all sorts of different genres. So we just decided, like, why not just go with that? Instead of having it all be like an anthology of slice of life stories, we could have slice of life, but yeah, let's also have a Western in here. Let's have a ghost story. Let's have a pirate story. And the collection which we first did, that the first Young Men in Love collection, very much was this wild sort of breadth of genre, but all with that common link that it was an romance, or queer male romance of some description, which felt more genuine, felt a little bit more from the heart, felt like it came from a lived experience of what that's like. Even if it's fantastical. I mean, like, not many of us have dated a ghost to my knowledge, but it
I
was,
wish.
it all had that extra level to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what sets us apart, Joe, is that everybody on the book is a queer man,
Mhm.
or a non-binary person with same-sex attraction, right? And in my mind, queer man also means queer, like trans man, obviously,
Mhm.
right? So, just to throw that out there, it's all included. Um, and I think that's what sets us apart, is that everybody on the book, down to the letterer, the logo designer, every colorist, every artist, every writer is a queer person.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's been very much about kind of our community, within the wider LGBTQ plus community, getting a chance to sort of tell our own experiences a little bit, instead of them being told by other people. Which, it's great that they're out there. Like, it's fantastic that those
Yeah,
things
no shade to
exist.
Heartstopper, right?
Exactly. Well, no one's going to say anything against
No,
Heartstopper. It's
no. But
wonderful
we
that
did beat
it
them at the
exists.
GLAAD Awards.
But yeah, it's just like, we just thought it'd be nice for creators who identify that way to be able to tell their own stories. Because, like I say, our personal experiences, our lived experiences are valid, and like, we should be able to tell them however we choose, whether that be, like, say, in a pirate story or a ghost story, or a slice of life, like just sharing little elements which sometimes maybe get overlooked or get missed by someone who doesn't necessarily have that same lived experience.
Yeah, I mean, your story in the first Young
Mm.
Men in Love book, Joe, really opened my eyes to this, fetishization of larger people, and
Mhm.
I didn't realize that was a thing,
Yeah,
and that
exactly. And I think, like
sucks.
I say, it's something
And
which I think, like, if you've got an romance written by someone else who is not identifying that way, they don't necessarily see that. They don't necessarily realize it's a thing, and it's just like, well, yeah, well, I'm actually like a guy. I'm a bigger guy as well, in this community, and I know it's a thing. So, like, I was like, well, I never see stories which talk about it, so that was part of why I wanted to do my story
Mhm.
in the book. And I think we have quite a few stories which were like that. I mean, Ned's
Ned.
story, obviously,
Yeah.
telling their experience as a trans man who was married to a cis man, and their sort of transition happened after they had been married. It was a wonderful story to include. It obviously was
So good.
absolutely gorgeous. It's one of
So
the
good.
highlights of the book, I think.
One of my
But
favorite
it was
stories in
also
the
the
book.
fact that it was such a personal story and something which I think a lot of people maybe don't understand about the experience. And it was being able to share that, having a platform that we could create with young men in love, that allowed Ned to be able to share that kind of story. I thought was fabulous. I thought it was one of the most important aspects of the book that we put together. So
I
and
agree.
something we hope to continue.
Sorry.
So
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Joe.
Ooh.
No, I just agree so much that Ned's story was so important in that book. You know, there were a few stories that really, really, really was like, wow, this is an important story to put out there. Yours was one, Ned's was one, Greg Anderson Elise was one. You know, because you're looking at a team of all Black creators, all Black queer creators, and they're telling a story that only they could tell. And I think it's very, very, very important.
And we love that with Young Men in Love, New Romance, the follow-up now, which we're funding through Kickstarter. Greg and David are going to be part of the book too, and they will be telling continuation of that story. But like it'll be continue to be self-contained and everything, but it's going to involve the same characters. So you know, there's benefit to those to maybe people who are backing, who maybe haven't checked out the first Young Men in Love, to back up that tier where you can get both books.
That was a requirement of mine when I reached out to Greg. I was like, I want to see Tyrone and Jamal again.
Yeah.
Like no joke. I want to see more of these guys. So get a hold of David. Let's make this happen.
So what are you guys contributing to this version of the anthology?
So much like the first one, we're co-editing it. So the stories are sort of pitched to us, and we sort of go through them, make sure they fit with what we're looking for the book to be. We'll go through the various editorial sort of aspects of it, just making sure the content's all right, and obviously making sure that it's finished to the highest possible quality. With the additional help, obviously, of Away Blue World, who are obviously making sure it's printed exactly as we want it to print out. But the other aspect is, much like the first one, we're also contributing to stories of our own. So obviously last time we each had our own stories. We're doing that again. I think, have we revealed what mine is yet? I can't remember. But
I don't know. We could reveal it now.
I mean, I don't see why not. So mine is this time going to be a superhero story. It's very much a little bit different from the superhero stories I'm known for, because it's not in the vein of Western superhero stories. It's much more in the vein of a manga anime sort of influenced superhero story. Basically, fans of My Hero Academia, all those Deku, Bakugo / Fickers, they're going to love this story. So if you have ever been a fan of that particular anime manga, and you like yourself some Deku, Bakugo / then you're probably going to enjoy my story, Blazing Ahead, which is going to be my little contribution to Young Men in Love, New Romance.
And then my story, I'll just talk about it right now. I'm doing with Daryl Tell, and because of COVID, the script writing slowed way down. You know, COVID and the continuing brain fog, honestly. But my story is a horror romance called Final Boys, where it kind of flips the horror trope on its head with the whole slasher horror. It's not going to be gory or anything. We're not going to show that on page. But it kind of flips that whole horror trope of the final girl on its head, and instead we're going to have two boys that find themselves in this situation and fall in love.
So approaching, as editing the book, does that change the way that you approach your own writing?
A little bit. Well, certainly when I was scripting it, it was almost. I mean, when I'm scripting most of my comics, I'm kind of self-editing as I go. But I think I was stricter with myself going through this.
Yeah,
Like,
you got to step up your game, otherwise
yeah.
everybody
I
else is going to
mean,
be like, "Well, you suck, though."
yeah. And as well as that, it's just kind of like, because when you get giving out notes to other people, you kind of think like, well, I got to give myself the same notes. So I would say I am fully aware, like every letterer who's ever worked with me will know, I am troublingly verbose when it comes to writing dialogue for comic books. So certainly that was something I was aiming for, making an improvement on when I scripted my own. I definitely have not quite hit that. I definitely need to do some further editing on my dialogue to fit it all in. But generally, yeah, I think for me it was just being a little stricter with myself, to get like, which I need a draft out. Like, it gets to a point where you're just like, right, like, just give a draft out, I can always fix it next. But yeah, I was just spending perhaps a bit more time than usual being like really strict with myself as I was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same. Like, when you're working on these anthologies and you're also editing the anthology, it's like you really beat yourself up because you don't have. I mean, I'll run stuff by Joe, I'll run stuff by Tyler at Away Blue World, but you don't really have an editor telling you should do this instead of that, because because
Plus,
you're
there's
the
also
editor.
this thing of like seeing everyone else's stories and seeing like certainly with the first volume, like every story was absolutely amazing and fantastic, and we're having it again with this story. I mean, like
Oh
having
my God,
a
Bradley's story that
story.
he just turned in. Holy crap!
Oh yeah, like there's been just some incredible stories being sent into us, and like, I mean,
Bananas.
we got Al Ewing on this time, and he did a story with Luciano Vecchio, who did the layouts for it, and seeing that work together, because those they came up with this idea of essentially a silent story, and we were like, oh, I don't know if that's going to work, kind of thing. And then, like, literally, with the explanation we were getting it, but the script which came in was probably one of the most detailed scripts I've ever read. And I was like, this is actually genius. We absolutely have to do this. This is such a brilliant idea.
It's going to be
Yeah,
so good.
I'm very excited to see how that's been coming along. And like, I think people are going to be really love that story because it's a very fun story.
So who else is who are some of the other creators that are working or contributing to this project?
So we've got a lot of the of old hands from the original Young Men in Love taking part again this time. So we've got people like Bradley Clayton, we've got Anthony Oliveira, and August Kanakis, who actually drew my story in the first one. They're now going to be working with Anthony to draw their story. We've had God, who else? Well, obviously we got Greg and David, and Jack
DJ
Melendez,
Kirkland.
Like, we got a bunch of like people who've been in my first volume taking part again, but we've also got like a few newer people taking part as well. Like, say we got Ali Ewing and Luciano this time. Oh God, I haven't got the full list of the spreadsheet in front of me. Have you got the spreadsheet in front of you by any chance?
No, I
like,
don't. And
so many names.
and I don't know how to pronounce Ilias's last name.
But like,
I
we got
don't
like a
want to
real
butcher
small
it.
squad of creators, which has been absolutely amazing to have everyone taking part. Because, like I say, every time, every new person has a completely different kind of story to tell and a different way of telling it, and it's just been absolutely amazing to see what everyone brings to this idea of telling these kind of stories. I should point out as well that Al Ewing and Luciano's story is actually being finished by Patricia Oliver, who is an artist that Luciano had recommended, suggested himself. And like, the finished artworks that he's handing in are just absolutely incredible. And yeah, oh God, yeah, there we go. So like, we got, who else we got? We got Joe Corallo is coming in, so that's a newbie to our team.
I've chatted with him before.
Yeah, exactly. Joe's a great guy. The story that he submitted is absolutely fantastic. It's really sweet. So I think that's going to be a fun one. Yeah. We've got Josh Cunlon, who's been with us before, Josh Trujillo, actually writing a story for us, who I really wanted to have on because we missed out on having him the first time round. So yeah, it's just been a really, really interesting mix of people who'd already worked with us and people who were new to come in. Like, in fact, even sometimes we'd have teams who were a mix of the two. So like one team we've got is Hamish Steele, who's writing another story for us, who drew his own story in the first book, but this time he's having his story drawn by Giovanni Puta. So yeah, it's going to be really awesome to see these different stories coming together and just seeing what we can pull together in the end.
So what lessons did you learn from the first anthology that you're kind of using to help improve this one?
I'd say using Kickstarter this time is a
Yeah,
is a good
I was gonna
lesson.
say that's probably really the only thing which we're
Yeah.
really doing different.
Yeah, because we want the book to reach a certain threshold and be able to pay everybody like right off the bat.
Mhm.
I mean, everyone was paid right off the bat anyway because Tyler is awesome. Tyler at Awake Blue World, but we want the book to reach that threshold where it's
Yeah. And like the audience
Yeah.
with Kickstarter sometimes isn't necessarily an audience that regularly goes to comic shops or regularly goes to bookstores even. Sometimes are getting their entertainment in these mediums directly through Kickstarter and crowdfunding and making them happen there. So it was a chance for us to reach out to essentially a new audience element, which hadn't necessarily been aware of even the first one. As well as that, it just affords us the opportunity to just sort of spread the word and kind of almost do a good bit of early release marketing, to really spread the word for Young Men in Love New Romance way ahead of the actual release when it comes out in bookstores and comic shops everywhere. And we think like that was probably one element we could definitely learn to get it out to as wide a audience as possible. But in terms of like the content of the book and everything, like Young Men in Love, the first one was finished to honestly such a high quality. It's probably one of the most beautiful books I've ever been a part of, and that I think was reflected in the way it was received critically, and the way obviously it was honored with recognition and awards from our peers in the comics industry and beyond, actually, because obviously GLAAD as well. So it was. I think that's not something we were like. We don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel here. Like that element of it is like we've got that down. The biggest things we could do is just seeing how we could get this to even more people.
Yeah, absolutely. Ditto.
So what are the reward levels that you guys are offering for
So
backers?
if I recall correctly, as well as like being able to get the standard release edition, which obviously will be available in digital and print formats, and this will be the edition which obviously will ultimately be available in comic shops and bookstores as well. We also have the ability to back at the level to get a exclusive cover, which will only be available through Kickstarter. So only people who have backed about the Kickstarter will have that version of the book. There's of course a tier where you can actually get both versions. So for people who really, really want to collect, because we know people love to collect their covers, they will be able to get both the Kickstarter exclusive and the standard release edition, both of which were absolutely sumptuously illustrated by Ricardo Bessa, a man I have been blessed with to work with before, because he did our wraparound cover for Pride Omnibus.
So freaking good.
And he killed it. He did an absolute amazing job. Awake Blue World also offer various add-ons for various other releases, which they've done over the years, including various other anthologies, which we've done, some of which me and Matt have been part of as well. Like I think you've edited a few, right, Matt, as well as had stories.
Well, yeah,
I've had stories in some of them.
That's how I knew I wanted to work with you, because I brought you into one of the anthologies before, and I was like, hey, I really like working with Joe. why don't we do something together? So that's how that
And
worked.
there's
But you were
also
right. You are very verbose in your
oh god,
dialogue.
yeah.
I was like, Joe, you need to cut this down to like a quarter of what it is. I'm like, the page is only so big. Do you want to cover all the art?
It's a good thing I'm working in prose now. We've also got signed book plates available, which again involve Ricardo Bessa's art, and which, as far as I'm aware, Tyler's taking to New York Comic Con this very weekend to meet up with as many of the creators who are taking part, because you know, a huge chunk of them are going to be there to get signatures on them. I unfortunately can't be there, so I won't be signing them myself, unfortunately. But there
Oh.
will be ones which are signed by absolutely everyone Tyler can get his hands on. As far as I'm aware, that's a very limited tier. And I think the last time I checked in with Tyler, there's like over half of them gone. So if people want a bookplate which is signed by like a smorgasbord of creators who've taken part in Young Men Who Love New Romance, they're going to need to get backing right now.
So, is there anything else about the campaign that maybe we didn't talk about that you would like for people to know about?
Other than I would really love people to go check it out and to maybe back it. Those are kind of my main things. Like I think everything else we've kind of covered. Like you kind of got a bit of everything about the content and the tiers and what you can expect. But obviously, there's always the chance to comment and send a message. It's Away Blue World running the campaign, so it'll actually go to Away Blue World directly. So if you have any queries about like things you'd like to see added as an add-on or something like that, I mean, certainly it'd be worth letting them know, and maybe that's something that they can accommodate. But other than that, the main thing is that we want to make this book so much because, like I say, the first book meant so much to us, and we think there's so much more scope to continue telling these kind of stories, and that this book could be something special and wonderful for people again, and obviously finding people who maybe didn't find the first one the first time. I would really love more people to be able to check it out and to back it, because we really need you guys to get us to that goal so that we can make it as big as we possibly can and make it as special as we possibly can. So my main things would be like, please support us, because it obviously will help us a ton and it means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We have 2 weeks left on the campaign, and we're about what, halfway there?
Yeah, just
So
about 55%, something like that. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we're like over halfway there now, which is
So
like
we definitely need people to jump in. You're not charged until the campaign funds, so jump in now. And also, I think it's important to note that while this book isn't like a YA book per se, like it's not dumbed down for kids, basically, it is appropriate for all ages. So there's no gore, there's no sex, there's no grossness, there's no cheating, tears, any of that stuff that you see in like the old romance comics. It's all very, 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 very positive. And I think that's an important distinction too.
So, do you want to give one? You guys want to give one final pitch for the book and where people can find you online?
Yeah, sure. So for Young Men in Love New Romance, it's funding right now on Kickstarter. You can hit the search bar, just Young Men in Love, and it'll just come straight up. And like I say, you can back it for I think 10, maybe a dozen. I can't remember our final tally now. Brand new stories of male romance, all written and drawn and colored and lettered, created wholly by queer, male, non-binary, and trans-masc creators who have lived experience of what it is like to have same-sex attraction, romance, and love. And it's all positive stuff. It's all a vibe. Just really, really genuinely positive energy, which we could do with more of that in the world right now. And we need you guys to help us do it. So please, please, please back us. And as for finding me online, I'm at Joseph Glass on Twitter. I will never call it X. And I'm at Joe Glass on Instagram. Those are my two main ones. I think I'm Joe Glass Comics on TikTok. Yeah, those are my big ones. But yeah, that's where you can find me, where I share a lot more about my own writing, and like not just my comics work, but also my novels and prose, which we have some news about the next novel coming out soon. So stay tuned.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I think Joe said it better than I could. But I'm
I don't have
at
COVID
Matt
dog brain,
Miner.
so.
What?
I don't have COVID dog brain right now, so.
Yeah, I know. I'm still kind of foggy. I'm at Matt Miner XVX on Instagram. I gave up on Twitter once Elon took over. So don't look for me there because the posts are from however many years ago. But find me on Instagram, Matt Miner XVX.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to chat about the anthology, and best of luck as it you hit the home stretch, I guess. And we will we'll continue to follow it over on Comic Watch and in our weekly crowdfunding corner post. And next time you guys either have another anthology or solo projects that you guys are working on, I'd be more than glad to have you guys back and chat with you some more.
Awesome.
That'd be great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
All right. Well, have a good evening, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, Chad.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.